Now boarding our first class Ultra Gold passengers. Welcome into Other People's Shoes, the podcast that takes you on an extraordinary journey through the lives of others, where empathy knows no bounds. Your host, Neil Matthews, is absolutely thrilled that you're here. Please take your seat as we're about to take flight into season 16. Be sure to hold on tight, because Take Flight isn't just about the skies above. It's about the depths within. We'll dive headfirst into the stories of those who faced turbulence and yet found the strength to rise above it all. So grab your headphones and get ready to soar with us as we launch into season 16. Thank you for flying with us. Buckle up and let's take flight.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. As you know, I am your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you for flying with us today. That's right. We're taking off once again. We're in the skies above, heading and making our way, landing safely. By the way, we did land safely. Your luggage has made it to your final destination, which today is Colorado. How far away we are from Oregon? Not very far. In fact, I have a crazy Colorado airport experience. So here we go. Back in December, my family and I decided to take a cruise. Now you might be thinking, that sounds fun, that sounds exciting. It sort of was, it sort of wasn't. We actually had to miss one of the stops because the weather was so bad where we were. We didn't get to go to the perfect day at Coco Cay. Thank you, Royal Caribbean. You don't like us very much, I know. So then we fly home from Miami to Denver, and the pilot's bragging about, oh, passengers, we're going to be 10 minutes early into Denver, so enjoy the extra 10 minutes that we get you back. And I'm like thinking, wow, that's kind of cool. 10 minutes, extra minutes. And then we land, and then ensues the panic. Now here's how it played out. First class was on our plane. Nothing against those kids in first class, but they're kind of snooty. They're kind of pretentious. They're also kind of rude, because here's the thing. There was a plane at our gate that we needed to get to. So the captain decided to make a little Omaha executive decision, little homage to Peyton Manning in the Colorado area. And we landed at a different gate, which meant my family and I had to do a little Home Alone style and run to the next gate. So we made it home to Medford, Oregon. Now listen, I used to be a runner, but when you have a backpack and you have a 7-year-old right behind you in tow and you're trying to run and people are not getting out of your way, it wasn't very fun. Experience my Colorado time there as a 0 out of 10. My guests today are just ratcheted up all the way. Help me welcome in my new friends, Beth and Brian. How are you guys today?
Great.
Hey, Neil, doing great. Thanks. By the way, running in Colorado, you're up higher elevation too. So good job.
That's why I was so winded, I think.
Yeah.
I'm going to blame it on that, not my obeseness, inability to run across the airport. But I say that, you guys, I loved your city. Like, I wanted to indulge in Quiznos. I was so excited. On our way home, I'm going to get some Quiznos because I used to work at Quiznos back in the day, and I was like really excited. And as I ran past, I was like, and there goes my opportunity at Quiznos. Goodbye.
Yeah, no time.
No time. No time like the present.
I have to say, if you stayed in the airport, though, you did not see the parts of Colorado.
And I've heard that. I have heard that. I've heard that Colorado is actually very gorgeous, and I shouldn't judge the people or the state based on my one-time experience flying through Colorado.
No, definitely
Come
not.
on back. Come on back. You'll enjoy it.
Did you at least see the mountains from the air?
Sort of, when I could navigate through my wife and daughter, because my daughter's hogging the window selfishly. I'm like, 16-year-old, come on, get out of the way.
You're a good dad. Yep. Give her the window.
I had the aisle, and then I regretted it because every time I'd get bumped by the cart and I just get settled into sleep, and then somebody bumped my chair, and I was like, this is why we're talking about taking flight, because I apparently need some flying etiquette lessons, or I don't know. We'll press forward. Back to you guys, which is really why we're here today. I'm excited to sit with you because I think it's a rarity for our show's history, actually. We rarely get a husband and a wife at the same time. So we're kind of in this new territory, this new sky, this new experience. And so I love that idea of sitting with both of you today. So I just want to acknowledge that as well. Well, let's do this first, because I always love to lead us to every show with this question. Beth, this is really important that we just do this. I know you're really excited about this, and that's this question. Beth, what style of shoe do you like to wear?
So I like to wear a mule. It's just an easy slip on. I have some chronic foot pain. They're the most comfortable shoes for me.
Now, Brian, I could ask you your shoe size, but we'll stick with shoe style just so, we don't put you too much on the spot here. Is there a style or brand that you like?
Bigger size than hers. Yeah, no, I like hiking shoes. No particular brand, whichever one is comfortable and can take me places. Like to kind of have lots of options, flexibility, and being able to go anywhere with weren't stepping anything or slipping.
Well, so our family is in the process of building a home right now, and where we are in Central Point, technically Oregon, away from Eagle Point, so very close but different. It is covered in mud and fields. I am such a princess shoe person. Every day I'm having to clean my shoes, and every day I'm having to wash my shoes. People are making fun of me left and right. They said I need to embrace the rubber boot, or the muck boot, I think is maybe even what it was called. And so, Brian, I want to ask you, God, a guy, should I embrace that, or should I just continue to cry and whine every time my shoes get dirty?
I just go with what you got. I don't know, the muck depends on how much muck you're going through.
It's a lot. And I had to get like indoor, outdoor carpet for the studio because, again, I was walking and then the dirt would get on the floor and it would sound like sandpaper every time I would walk. I'm not OCD, but maybe because I couldn't handle doing anything in this room without it being swept and mopped first. Which my wife is absolutely devastated by.
Yeah, more folks are leaving their shoes at the door now, I guess. So.
Yeah, embrace the Asian way.
I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm just going to embrace the Asian way, like you're saying. So now I have slippers on right now. I actually have slippers on currently because I don't want to wear my shoes in the new studio. Plus, we got carpet in here now, so we got to keep the carpet clean. So we're in this season that I'm really excited about when the brainstorm and the powers that be came together and they were like, listen, we have this amazing series called Take Flight. Now, some people have kind of said, how did that come about? And I'm always embarrassed to kind of admit where it came from, but it actually came from a rap song, which, Brian, I know you're a big rap fan. I just have that feeling about you. You just bumping that all the time in the car, in the Suburban, I'm sure. It actually comes out of a rap song by a guy named NF, and he actually has a lyric in his... Oh, you know NF. Okay, good. Because he actually has a lyric in his...
Not well. We know his music.
Gotcha.
Know who he is. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I was like, wow, you guys, that's
Big
even
difference.
better. You know him. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
But anyway, it comes out of this lyric of one of his songs where he talks about taking flight. And I really embraced that. And I thought of the idea of that, kind of stole a little bit from him, which isn't the first time. In that, I thought, I wonder how many people have had this moment where they've felt grounded. Now, I know as a kid, I was grounded a lot. And I know you guys have a lot of kids that come in and out of your home just based on what you guys do. And we'll get into that momentarily. The idea of being grounded and then being able to soar, there's something powerful in that moment. And so I just wondered for you guys, do you have that type of take flight moment?
I think we do. Practical standpoint, a spiritual standpoint, his career in the Air Force was he was a pilot. From spiritually, when we started our marriage, Brian was already in the military. He served for 25 years. We met at a wedding. We dated long distance, and I did not understand what marrying someone in the military would entail. Brian didn't really know exactly what to tell me to expect, but he didn't tell me a whole lot, which I'm very thankful for. God knew in his sovereignty that if I knew what I was getting into and the lack of control and chaos, I would probably have been like, I can just keep waiting. And I'm very happily married. He's a really good man. I'm glad I didn't know. We moved 3 times that first year of marriage. I've been very career oriented prior to that. So I found myself very bitter, kind of like, what is this life? This is not what I signed up for. We were struggling a lot in our marriage. He deployed sometimes that assignment, and we were on a bit of a spiritual journey. We kind of dabbled in trying to, let's go to church. That's what good people should do. It was a journey for us, but eventually when we moved again, we got involved in a Bible study. It was actually the book of Genesis, and we were looking at Sarah and Abraham's life. I eventually surrendered my life to Christ, and that really caused me to have a perspective change that walking with Christ gave me, is just to embrace this community as the people that we were to minister to. And we went to a marriage conference. It was a Christian marriage conference run by a ministry called Family Life, which is actually part of Cru, which is the ministry we serve with now. At that marriage conference, they talked a lot about the biblical blueprint for marriage. I just remember, wow, we are doing this all wrong. And we were very grateful and excited about the information that we were learning. Wow, we need to refigure this out and do it God's way. And so that really transformed our marriage. And then I think we just have continued to take flight since then, embrace the changes and the transitions and the turbulence of the military life, all the moving. We moved 14 times. And I began to see it just as my mission field and to embrace it, no longer be bitter, to feel like, yeah, Brian, was the one who served in the uniform. If God had ordained for me to marry this man, then it was really my calling too, and to get behind it instead of just trying to keep fighting it.
Well, Beth, first off, I want to acknowledge what you just shared. So many times, I think when we see a service person, whether it be a man or a woman or whomever, we immediately thank them. At least we should. So, Brian, if we were face to face at a coffee shop, I would absolutely extend my hand. I would say thank you for your service, and I want to acknowledge that even right now. Beth, so many times, I feel like we need to equally thank the wife or the partner, the husband or the wife, because sometimes it's a woman that's serving and the man's at home. It's rare, but it seems more and more to be commonplace. In that, I'm passionate about that only because my dad served 20-something years in the Marine Corps, and I don't think my mom ever really got the handshake or the thank you or her act of service, her act of sacrifice. Because again, I think it takes two. And I would wonder, and I don't know these statistics, maybe you guys do, and if you do, obviously feel free to share. I would wonder, statistically speaking, how many marriages survive after a 20-year, a 10-year career in the service? I would venture to guess not many.
Thanks, Neil, for acknowledging the fact that, yeah, there are a lot of folks serving when it comes to the family. I tried to take the opportunity to thank Beth on a regular occasion. And we had two kids as well. I tried to even thank them in different ways. Definitely a team effort. And I was very thankful to finish my time in the duty and get to the end, realize that our marriage is still intact. Our family was still intact. And you're right. Unfortunately, that isn't always the case. The major thing that really helped us along the way was hope and our foundation in Christ. Didn't mean we didn't still have challenges along the way. Again, it gave us that hope and that foundation that helped carry us through some of the tougher times.
Yeah. And I would just say, statistically speaking, military rate of divorce is just a little bit higher than the rest of the population. Certainly, more involved. We'll meet some young soldiers and their families. I mean, they're young. They're like not even 30 and they've been married a few times. It's definitely a hard life and can take its toll. I don't think that we could have done it without the Holy Spirit and the Lord coming into our life.
I think there's so much power in that to say, not for us. We're not gonna. I'm sure there were times you were like, you know what? Maybe it'd be easier to eject this mission. Maybe it'd be easier to get off this plane. This is a little too much turbulence for me. I want to get off. I want off this ride. Think again, what a testimony that your kids saw you walk through that. That again, it wasn't a Hallmark movie all the time. It wasn't Disneyland every single day. Fairy tale princess come home. I'm sure there were moments that there were like that. I would think the day to day, the day in and the day out probably wasn't quite like that. I would just imagine.
I think most couples would, at some point, a husband and wife are going to have a moment where they might think or wonder that. One of the decisions and agreements that Beth and I made before we actually walked down the aisle, she walked down the aisle. We agreed that we would never use the D word. We called it divorce. We referred to it as the D word. And, no matter how upset or angry or hurt, agreed to never use that in the discussion or in an argument. Doesn't mean it was always easy or fun. We were committed and praise God, He carried us through.
Yeah. And I think I had to also not even let my thoughts go there. Like, it's just not an option. We're just going to persevere. And we've done a lot of marriage studies over the years. And I think that's really helped too. We were investing in a lot of other people's marriages. While we're doing that, we're learning biblical principles or hearing different teachers teach on marriage. So we're continuing to make deposits in our own life. I remember one speaker we heard, well, when you get a divorce, it's not like you get to marry someone who's not a sinner. If you get remarried, you're still a sinner marrying a sinner. And then you've got the baggage of your previous marriage. And I just thought that was something really practical that stuck in my, not that I was thinking about getting divorced or anything like that. Wow, that's such a profound truth. We always think grass is greener. I think constantly being in teaching, like just to remind ourselves of the commitment we have made, and that the world's view of that if you just get rid of that person, then you're going to be happy. That's not really realistic. We've seen some, what I would call of the damage of divorce in siblings and parents. So it's not always easier.
Back in November, I was out in North Carolina, which is my Mecca, if you will, my place that I just want to just go and dream of. Finally, a good dream come true to be able to spend some time in North Carolina. And while I was out there, I actually took advantage of going to church at a different church, obviously not my own church. A friend of mine is on our worship team. And so she said, hey, I'm going to be singing that weekend. I'm like, well, that just seems to be God's provision. I wanted to see you on stage sing, and here you are. And I get to come out and watch you sing. So anyway, so she sings, she does her thing. And then they have a pastor on vacation. So they have this guy on video. And I thought, this is different. I've never heard a church put a guy on a video to do the sermon. I thought they do a little different in North Carolina. Clearly, this guy's talking about marriage and talking about how sacred sacred marriage is and how God's design of marriage is just perfect, we as people sometimes mess it up. And I thought, okay, yeah, I'm sort of following along. I'm like, my marriage is pretty good though. Then he said this most profound thing, and it has stuck with me all this time. He said, marriage is a lot like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I was like, what? Hold on. Hold on a second here. He goes, no, listen, hear me out. He goes, you got the peanut butter on one side and you got the jelly on the other side. Whatever it may be, grape jelly, strawberry, boysenberry, whatever your flavor is, you just pick that right now. And I was like, okay, grape jelly is I guess my favorite. And he goes, now imagine for a second, you take the two sides, they're nicely spread, and maybe it's sourdough bread. I'm like, sourdough, peanut butter and jelly? I don't know about that. He said, and smash them together in your mind. And I'm like, okay, smashed them together. I got that down. He goes, now pull them apart. I was like, well, why would you? Okay, all right, fine, I'll pull them apart. And he goes, now imagine put the grape jelly back where it was. Put the peanut butter back where it was. And I was like, you can't. They're smashed together. You're always going to have some blending there. And he goes, yeah, that's what marriage is. When you pull it apart, there's still part of you that goes with that other person.
It's true.
I called my wife that night and I said, babe, you're my grape jelly. And she goes, what? I was like, never mind. I'll tell you when I get home. That whole thing stuck with me because I thought so many times in marriages, we think, oh, it's going to be so much better if I leave. It's so much better for that person. It's so much better for them. It's so much better for the kids. We're just not making it work. We're tired of being peanut butter and jelly together. You know, that guy's a little nutty. Maybe she's a little nutty. I'm probably the nutty one, just be candid. The idea, again, if you guys were to split, and again, I know we don't, this is sacred ground, I feel like we're walking on. What message do you think that would have sent to your kids and others in your life if you had allowed that word divorce to be more than just the D word? Probably not go down that road too far.
It shows that the enemy would win. We weren't willing to fight. I feel like that's one of the enemy's biggest tactics is he wants to divide marriages. He knows he can do collateral damage to the family for generations to come.
Talking about the grass being greener. Someone once told me the grass is green whenever you walk. I mean, obviously I don't know exactly what message would go to the kids. Some disappointment and some follow-on probably effects. It's about the commitment too. I mean, a covenant, staying true to that through the good and the bad, sends a good message as opposed to the other one that would send if you split.
Well, and going deeper, the Bible says that marriage is a picture of Christ in the church. I think when couples do divorce, desecrating that model for our children. It's supposed to be a sacrificial bond, push through and you stay committed.
Beth, when you think about your marriage, if this turbulence maybe didn't happen, what did it do when you ran against that turbulence?
Well, I think definitely for me, all the transitions, the moves, the changes, the deployment, it was hard. It really built a lot of character in me and caused me to have to make a shift from being selfish and consumed with what I want and what makes me happy to Brandon had a choice. He was in the military. He had to go where they sent him. He had to do these things. And I could either be supportive and adjust, or I could have been miserable. The first couple of moves, I was more miserable because I was self-focused. Came to Christ, it was just like, these are all these people that we can impact. For us, I feel like when we came to Christ, it was like, this is the greatest news we've ever heard. We had not really heard it very clearly. And we're like, we got to share this with our other people. Look what King of the Biblical Blueprint has done for our marriage. We were just on mission instead of what is this in it for me? Just think I'm still very, very far from perfect, but I think I'm a lot easier to be around than the selfish me who was just concerned about number one.
Brian, what do you think of that? Do you think she's less selfish now?
She's awesome. Oh yeah.
I was trying to set you up, my friend.
Yeah. Thanks for that lob there. Yes, of course. No, it was
blink if you're in a safe place right now.
Very thankful for the change of heart, the change of attitude, the change of relationship. I mean, obviously, I had change to make as well.
Right.
So it's not,
I'm sure. Yeah. I mean,
it takes two, of course.
I don't know what it's like to go fight for our country. I don't know what it's like to go overseas. Again, I was only the son of a Marine in the combat zone or deployed in any fashion. Would imagine when you're doing your job, you're in your plane and you're focused on the mission at hand, whatever that may be. But I would imagine your focus has to be zeroed in, laser focused on what you're doing, what you're trying to accomplish. Not mistakes happen. You could potentially lose your life if you're not focused, if you're not dialed in, locked in, whatever analogy you want to use in there. If you're worrying about stuff at home, you can't be. You got to be locked in. What does that do for you? Again, if a guy's not locked in and has his focus back at home.
Yeah, absolutely. You do have to kind of focus, compartmentalize. And you mentioned, the risk of losing your life. That certainly is. I was even more worried about maybe harming somebody else on the teams. You don't want to have an error or get distracted by something that's going to cause someone else to get hurt and to fail. Everybody in the military trains so frequently, regularly, and well. The training is part of what helps to prepare and equip you for what you're going to go into. When you get called up, the mission's being executed. Yeah, you just focus. The missions aren't going on all day. So if there is something you have to work out or work through, you can still have time later. From the time you're sitting down to brief up what you're going to do to getting back and finishing the debrief, you're focused and locked in.
Appreciate you sharing that. I've heard it for years say, oh yeah, you got to just put it in a box. You got to lock it down, whatever. Yeah, again, whatever analogy you want to use there. I don't know. You're still a human being. There's still a part of you that if you and Beth were at odds for whatever reason, again, I'm not trying to project anything or speak anything into existence that isn't there. I would imagine there's still a little part that could like sneak in there, a little burrowing in there. I think that's the power of making sure that you're ready to go. And I've been married 22 years now, kind of an older couple mentoring us back in the early days. I think we could have saved a lot of heartaches, saved a lot of arguments, definitely probably saved a little more money had we had a couple that could have kind of come around us, kind of put their arms around us metaphorically and maybe not even metaphorically, like physically, and said, no, Neil, stop being a dummy, stop being a jerk. This is what you need to do. Or likewise to Elizabeth, I mean, she's practically perfect in every way. So maybe they would have just, said, try it more this way. He's a delicate flower. You got to remember that. We didn't have that. So what is it that you guys have done to really help folks do that? You mentioned some of the younger couples that you've gotten a chance to kind of mentor. Why do that? Why provide that?
That's helping the younger couples. And what you're referring to is getting help for ourselves too. Before we started doing this throughout our marriage, we have regularly gathered with other couples in a small group setting to share life, and also it's occasionally to do a marriage focus topical enrichment study or something like that. And that's been helpful. Relationships where you have somebody to talk to.
Yeah. I mean, I would just say that first conference we went to, the platform and kind of pitched, these are great ideas that you too can take back with you. And we're new believers at this point, and we're like, this is great information. And, they hold up a book and they're like, hey, you can go buy this in our bookstore and you can start doing small groups. And so we did. We were like, yeah, this is great stuff. We got to share this. We know other people that are married in the military and coping with all these transitions that we can show. We just kind of started doing that. They're really easy to read, lead guides throughout the moves. Most locations, we would have a small group meeting in our home. Usually a good bit of our content was focused on marriage, not always, a good bit of it. And then eventually when Brian was ready to retire, we were connected with the ministry and they asked us to consider coming on to continue to do this full time. And it's not really something we had considered, but we were super excited about it. Felt that God had called us to continue to minister to the military. I kind of gained just a huge heart for military and their families because we had done it for so long. And then as Brian served longer and longer, I was kind of the older, more mature woman helping, encouraging the younger families. Now it seems a great natural progression from what we were doing. Do that now as our Brian's second career, just to continue to invest in others. And now we work alongside the chaplains at the installations and will help do marriage enrichment, parenting courses, some combat trauma, healing courses. And then we also do ministry at the Air Force Academy here. And that's a lot of discipleship, but we also do offer some pre-marriage mentoring that will work with couples that are engaged. And we've done that probably 4 or 5 different courses, probably 10 or 12 different couples. Whenever we sit down with any of these people, we tell them, we do not have a perfect marriage. We do not have all the answers.
We're not counselors.
We're not counselors. We're just here to do life with you. And I think that's what a lot of Christian ministry is just doing life with people, being real. And especially the pre-marriage, I just feel like I tell them a lot of, well, don't do this because I did this and that was a really bad idea.
But I started noticing my parents weren't much in love with each other. They seemed to be fighting more when my dad was home. And then when my dad was home, he tended to hide in the garage and build models and smoke his pipe and tobacco pipe, just to be clear. Because, I know you're in Colorado. So he seemed to be isolated from my mom. Even to this day, remember anybody from the Marine Corps, from my dad's unit, from anybody really coming to my dad. He retired as a gunnery sergeant. So, often I call him Gunny just because unless I need something, then it's Dad. Most of the time it's Gunny. I don't remember anybody coming to Gunny and saying, what's going on? Why aren't you squared away on your marriage? Why isn't, this going on? I wish that there was Beth and Brian back then that could have come around my parents and said, no, come on, this is the way you do marriage. This is the way you do life. And what's crazy is we were active in a Southern Baptist church, so throw rocks at that. If people want to, that's fine. You can. Even in that, there wasn't the men of the church coming around my dad. There wasn't the men's group like I'm a part of now, and maybe Brian, you're a part of as well. There wasn't any of those guys kind of infiltrating my dad's life in some respects. And I'm not mad at that. I'm not throwing rocks at the people that didn't, or I just think it's a different time and a different era maybe. And maybe that's the only thing it is. I'm so happy that you guys are there. I have a young kid that I grew up around. He's in the Air Force and he was married. They had a kid together and now they're not. And I don't know what happened. It's none of my business. He hasn't shared. And if he does, fine. Something happened. Something stopped the marriage from happening. Something caused a divorce. And again, I don't know if it was his fault, her fault. It doesn't matter. I feel like you guys are warm breath of fresh air that not a lot of people know about. I'm wondering, why aren't there more people like you?
Well, first of all, over the last 20 years, the military has done a great job of, bringing on more people, counselors, opportunities for service members and families to get help and to seek counselors. And also it's been less of a concern for people to do that. I think, people were kind of afraid at one point to say, hey, I'm having a problem. Well, now, no, we want you to work through any sort of personal issues that you have so that you can get it taken care of and be able to focus on the mission and be ready to go. And so that's one good thing. The military services as a whole are doing a much better job there now with that. And, we serve with Cru Military, but there's a number, and there's a lot of ministries out there now that have people and, at different military locations available doing similar things, working with chaplains or maybe doing things through local churches. And so there are greater opportunities and a lot of folks out there doing some similar things.
Yeah, I think too, the chaplains have always been there. They've always got resources available. We partner with them. But that service member has to be willing to go to the class or, to go to their neighbor who invites them over. Hey, we're going to do small group. They have to be, I do think there's more of focus on recognizing for retention. We've got to do a better job of caring for the families and the marriages, so there's just more, I just feel like there's more resources seem to be being given towards it. And there are other ministries, but I will say Cru Military is in about 60 locations in the United States. So that's installations where we've got people, maybe not always doing the same thing as us. We do family ministry, and some of our locations just do ministry for the people going through basic training. We're at all the basic training locations in the U.S. But anybody could go to crumilitary.org and check in, and see if they could find it. Or if you've got a listener, maybe who has a niece or a nephew or a son or a daughter and wants to connect them, they could go there and get the information and connect with our staff members. There's people just like us, doing ministry who just have a heart for the military. Most of them are prior military, but not all.
Now, Beth, I heard rumors that there is a book on the horizon. Are those rumors accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Not really something I ever saw myself doing. I was a math and sciences girl. So, but when we came to Christ, I think I mentioned it was in the book of Genesis, in the life of Sarah and Abraham. And it was some people that Brian flew with who'd invited us to get involved in their Bible study. And in the Bible study that we did, both of us came to Christ in it, but also, I feel like one of the personal encounters I had with the Lord in that Bible study is I really saw myself as seen by the Lord, because I saw in Sarah's life, I saw parallels to things that she was facing, which is what I was facing. And so I just kind of realized, like, this book that was written, more than 2,000 years ago, God still gets me. He still understands. And so, like, some of the parallels, the biggest one is when God told Sarah and Abraham, go to a land I'm going to show you. That's what we in the military call a permanent change of station or a move, a PCS. And, we did a lot of those. And I think Sarah did a lot of them too, only she was moving around with her camels and donkeys and tents. I at least had moving vans and movers. And then, Abraham went off to rescue Lot from the 4 kings with his 318 trained men. Well, right away with my military spouse eyes, I said, well, that's a combat deployment. And, I'm like, wow, Sarah was back in her tent while Abraham was doing these things. And so those parallels have always been in my mind, and I've always been just really attached to Sarah's story because I felt like I could see myself in it. She also struggled with infertility. So did we. So eventually I put together a proposal. And so there's a book being published in October of this year. I can finally say this year because we've turned. It's been a very long process. But it's being published with B&H Publishing Group, which is Lifeway's trade book division. And it is called Another Move, God, 30 Encouragements for Embracing Your Life as Military Wife. And so it's just the story of Sarah and Abraham and the parallels that I saw just to encourage other wives that are out there, to kind of stop bucking the military life and embrace it and see this as, your calling and something that God has for you for this season of your life.
Scariest moment in your military career, if you're allowed to share, Brian?
You would think it would be maybe a combat sortie, right? A combat mission, something like that. Probably I had a couple assignments in my career where I flew as an instructor pilot, and teaching brand new people to fly fast airplanes. And so, probably the scariest times I ever had were just, teaching some of those brand new students to fly and getting kind of close sometimes to some, too close. Where I had to basically take control of the aircraft to keep from hitting something we were supposed to. So that's normal. But, I did the same thing when I was a student pilot. I'm sure I, scared my instructor a few times. So that's why they train us and keep us. That's one of those times where, you're focused on what you're doing because you got to be ready to jump in there at any time. But that was also the most rewarding job I had, though, even though it was kind of dangerous. But love doing the instructor mission and teaching new pilots.
Yeah, I remember when you were an instructor, he would often come home and say, saved mine and a pilot's life today. You were having brushes with death regularly.
And just acting like he just had creamer in his coffee. Tried the vanilla today opposed to the hazelnut. Just walking wild side, just what it is. So you mean to tell me you were like the Viper of your flight training? Viper from Top Gun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I was, I don't know. I was probably like any other student.
You did well.
Well, I was thinking like Top Gun, they had Viper and Gesture. So I was thinking like you were one of those guys, up in the MiGs, you probably weren't flying against.
I was, yeah. At one point. Yep.
And he flew an airplane pretty similar. Those are Navy jets. So he was Air Force, but it's pretty similar. Actually, for
why
the first
can't you just
years
be a
of
naval
marriage,
aviator?
We're all on the same team. I love
right.
love all my brothers and sisters in the other services too. So,
well, my dad always makes the joke that UFOs are real. It's the Air Force that doesn't exist. So I don't know what that means to you, but he has said that for years. So I'm gonna let you just interpret that how you do. But I had to get that in for Gunny. So there we are.
Okay.
Well, Beth, what about?
by the way, thanks for your service. Right?
Yeah.
If your dad was,
thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate
so that's what we
that.
were saying earlier. So
Yeah.
And not always easy. So thank you.
Well, Beth, what about you? When you think back over his career, what is the moment for you that you were like, oh my gosh, hitting my knees, maybe calling the prayer chain? Was there a moment like that for you?
No, because back when he was in the Middle East, communication wasn't very good, and you really couldn't tell me anything anyways. There were things I found out years later that I probably if I would have known. I mean, I think one of the scariest things that we did as a family is we had orders to Korea. And we did go to Korea, South Korea. And it was like a week before we were about to leave. And, you know, the current leader's father, you know, they do all these crazy things, and he was shooting off missiles, and, you know, it was on the news everywhere. It was like, and I think my dad said, "Where are you taking my daughter and my grandchildren?" Just kind of like, yeah, you know, and I'm kind of like, are we going to be okay? And then we'd been there not even a week, and we went on a walk with the stroller. Our kids were 2 and 4 at the time. And we're walking around the flight line, and there's like, what do you call it? The shells.
Yeah.
There's shells from machine guns like everywhere. And then there's razor wire. And I'm like, wow, we're going to be here for 2 whole years. And I'm like, is this safe? Are you sure the kids and I should be here? But it ended up being perfectly fine. And
great assignment.
Yeah. It was, I mean, really good community. There's not a whole lot to do there, but we had a lot of assignments that were not in the greatest location. They weren't in the garden spots. They aren't places that you're like, oh, I wish I could live there. But community was super great. I think Korea was a great time. I mean, life was really simple over there, but it was scary that first week, just all the evidence. And, you know, when you're at a stateside gate, the gate guards have guns, but there they had lots of guns and lots of guards. So you're just kind of like, wow, we're really not in Kansas anymore.
Well, I think it's incredible, again, just the idea of getting to go to so many different places. Like, I'm always fascinated by where people are from, where people live, the experiences that they've come through. Because again, I think a lot of where you come from, that environment that you came out of, really dictates a lot of who you are and really kind of molds you and makes you in some respects, at least for some people. But I love the fact that you guys have gotten to travel to so many cool places. I'm sure sometimes you're like, yeah, it was really cool being in Korea. It was really cool being in blah, 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 wherever it may be. So that's fun. Well, I want to ask you guys this.
Well, we always really wanted Europe, but that wasn't in the cards.
Oh, that's too bad. My father-in-law, he was in the Army, and so he got to go to Germany. My dad got to go to like Okinawa and Korea, or I'm sure Vietnam. He was there too. Italy, all kinds of cool places like that. But
oh, cool.
So I'm curious about this for you guys. If somebody's listening right now and they're young and they're married and they're up and coming, or maybe they're sheepishly and, you know, or maybe not sheepishly, somehow got engaged to a guy that's now in the military, and they're like, well, now what do I do? What do I do next? And, you know, they're beginning that life journey together. What's the number one thing you would probably tell them to do in their relationship?
Practically, if they're just getting engaged, I would tell them to definitely do some premarital counseling, mentoring, preparation. A lot of folks will focus on the wedding ceremony, but I would definitely take some time to look into the purpose of marriage and just some practical things to prepare yourself before you get ready. And then, but as far as like, you know, what marriage advice is probably more what you're asking about.
Yeah, just stay committed, embrace the adventure. You know, just try to think of it as you just go on vacation a lot with all your stuff.
That is a great way to look at it, Beth. That is a great way to look at it.
Well, I mean, it's not really that way, but you have to just kind of embrace it and say, this is an adventure, and where are we going now? And, you know, it does get easier the more you do it, because you get to be so used to, yep, we've been here 2 years. It means we're moving again. When you come to anticipate it, and then you also maturity and life experience that all the things that you think are going to be terrible and you're not going to survive, you do. And so then you realize, oh, this doesn't look so great, but I know I survived A, B, and C, so I'll do this. And then, like, you know, faith in a sovereign Lord. I mean, I really, Acts 17:26 is the scripture that talks about God ordained in advance the times and the places that man would live. Some versions talk about like the borders. And I really clung to that as a military spouse, just to say all these assignments that we got, and we moved 14 times. They might have been a surprise to us. They might not be what we wanted. They might not be the great garden location, but they were ordained by God. And so that was an assignment for him, for me too, because I'm married to him, and to embrace it. And like I said, it got easier the longer you go out because you start realizing how to quickly jump in, make friends. That's a big advice I would have for that military spouse is get involved in community. Your device is a helpful tool to help lead you to community, but you can, especially for these younger spouses, you cannot have all your community on a device. You have to get involved in something. So get involved in a small group. Whatever your hobby is, get involved in a church, and you got to jump in right away because not only are you probably going to be moving, but your community that's military is also moving. So you're just in constant change. So you have to kind of jump in. And I learned how to do that kind of as a survival mechanism.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's some powerful advice. I want to go back to your book for a quick second. You talk about writing this book and the process of it. Was there a moment that you maybe hit a wall or you hit a spot where you're like, man, this is just hard. This section is really taxing me. This section is mentally draining me. And maybe that's the section you're like, do I really have to put this part in even though I feel called to put that part in? Maybe speak to that if you're able.
I don't think the vulnerability was that hard for me because since we've been in ministry, I've talked a lot about our struggles. And I also learned that was one of my survival mechanisms. I learned I had to be vulnerable to connect deeply, quickly. It's a risk. And I would always pray about that. But that's how I made friends, good, lasting friendships quickly. And I'm a researcher. I love to dig in the scriptures. I love to do research on cultural contextualization and the Greek and the Hebrew. And, I'm just a nerd. And I think the place where I did struggle, it was very easy to me to lay out what the biblical lessons were, but there were a few of those biblical lessons where I was struggling with how do I connect this to my reader with a personal, story related to military life. And really just what I would do then, I just put it away and work on something else, and pray about it and say, hey, God, I'm going to need you to give me some insight here, some creativity. I'm not super creative. I'm not artistic. But God was very, very faithful, to give me that when I would pick it up again. But I didn't have a ton of time to write it. So you can't sit on it for too long. But I did find that I had to have blocks of time to work it. I'm a really good multitasker, but I could not write in my normal multitasking way that I do things. I had to set aside a good block of time and get my head back into where was I and, how did I feel the Lord speaking to me? And, what is my connection to the military spouses? But I mean, honestly, it was a lot of work. I'm not going to lie, but it was really fun because I like digging in the scriptures and I like researching and, I had a million books. It was really messy in here.
Messy. But, sometimes they say mess brings brilliance, or a messy space is a messy head. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But greatest reward in being in the military life was what?
Certainly relationships and the people. That's kind of what I miss the most is the people who are, common cause and, going through some of those similar challenges together. And being able to not only work together, but trust one another and really do some challenging things and get together as a team. So I think that was, I was thankful to have that opportunity, have that experience to go through with those others.
Beth, before you answer, Brian, would you do it all over again, knowing what you know?
Yes. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah. And there were, it wasn't always fun or easy, but it was, I think, rewarding in the sense that it was accomplishing something meaningful and a lot of opportunities, not only to accomplish some really neat missions, but later on in my career to lead teams of people and to help others not only accomplish their military missions, but also maybe overcome some other challenges, outside the squadron as well.
Thanks for sharing that. Beth, what about you?
Yeah.
So I'm going to say two, because I can't pick, but basically just all the awesome people we met. I mean, we have so many friends now. If I just look at my Facebook feed, I mean, there's just so many memories and so many people that we never would have interacted with, just so much diversity of friends. It was just so good for us. And then I think too, just to shifting of our perspective until this laser focus on me and my kids and our issues. When Brian served in leadership, we really felt called that we were going to serve as a family. And so, just kind of having to shift our focus off our own circumstances and to be servant leaders to others and really invest in them. Some of the fondest memories I have is, ministering to the people in our units, going and helping them unpack boxes when they were sick, or visit them in the hospital, or clean their house when they had back surgery, or taking meals, visited them at the hospital, help with childcare, because I feel like that's what made a lasting impact on our kids. That, it's not about me. And I don't know that we would have naturally done that, just sought out to serve others so much, but I really feel like that made a really good impact on our kids. And so I'm really thankful for that, just to realize that it's just not all about me.
Brian, I asked that question of you, and first off, both of you, thank you for what you shared. I asked that question of you, would you do it again? Because for our 100th episode, I thought, who should we get? Should I get this main, try to go get a big celebrity name or somebody like that? Well, instead I went and got my dad, and I sat with him, and we had a pretty good conversation, I feel like, for the most part. But I asked him the question because, again, my parents have chosen to divorce. The military was good for us on some levels because I did get to experience a lot of culture, a lot of differences, growing up with different kids. And we didn't move as much as you guys did. So it sounds like you guys are way better movers than we were. But, in that, my family is kind of torn apart in some respects because, again, I don't blame necessarily the Marine Corps for that, but I think it had a part to play. And I asked him, I said, hey, Gunny, would you do it again? If you could do it again all over tomorrow, knowing what knowing the experiences, knowing your body's broken and beaten up and, hanging on by twigs and duct tape, so to speak, would you do it again? And I thought, man, he's going to ponder this. He's going to, reflect. He's going to take these moments to really toil over this question. And he immediately said, absolutely, I'd do it again tomorrow. And I was like, why? And he said, because there's this sense of duty. There's this sense of purpose. There's this sense of passion. There's this sense of, and I was like, okay, I get that's the Marine Kool-Aid. I get it. Fine. Grape Kool-Aid. Here we come. But you said very similar to what he said. And I just wondered why.
I just think you go through so much together. And, first of all, for most folks, when they go in the first place, there's something drawing them to it. And then after overcoming the training and different adversities and seeing the outcome on the other side, I just think there's something special that you're left with. And it's a lot of it's the people, hopefully it's also because of what you've accomplished, mission wise. And I don't want to get into, a lot of things going on around the world. You never know what you're going to be called up to do. And sometimes things work out better than others. But, I think if nothing else, I know probably just like your dad, you went in, you did the best you could based on what you're asked to do. And so, it's a rewarding opportunity.
I love that. Well, Beth, I know there is a website that you are pretty excited about, and it's pretty awesome. It's very easy to navigate, and I love the little tabs at the top. Makes it easy for folks to find different things, different facets to what you're offering. But how can folks get connected with you if they're hearing you right now? Again, that maybe younger couple or that niece or that nephew of somebody that's listening maybe right now that has that military, starting out. How can folks get connected with you?
Sure. So my website is just my name, BethRunkle.com. That's BethRunkle.com. Yeah, there's a contact me form. I basically blog encouragement and wisdom for military spouses. And I'm on social, Facebook, it's Beth Parker Runkle. Instagram is Beth P. Runkle.
Brian, yeah, I know you're big on Instagram. You're almost certified now with the following and the massive people that just want to check out what you're doing every day.
Yeah, in fact, I just updated my status before we started the interview here.
Yeah, so that's what I was wondering. Like
going on with Neil right now. Yeah, just so everybody would know.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. Thanks, Brian. You just struck me as like the Instagram aficionado. So you're offering classes. I'm here. Okay, I'm teasing, of course. You're not big on any of those, are you?
Go check Beth's stuff out. You'll be blessed and encouraged for sure.
Yeah.
I got nothing.
You got nothing. I ate bacon for breakfast and it was yummy. It was really good.
I got her. So that's what I got.
There's always one. Yeah. I say this with sincerity. There's a reacher and a settler in every relationship. I'm just saying. So I'll let you guys figure out who's who in that. But I know in my relationship, I definitely am the reacher. So there we are. Well, let's do something fun together. We also like to end our show with some silliness. I know Beth was a little nervous about this. Like, what is going to happen? What's going to take place?
Want to be prepared.
I appreciate that. But, there's a part of you that you just, the military life should have just prepared you for anything. Expect the unexpected.
Should have.
All right. Well, my show's kind of like that. It's expect the unexpected. All right. So we do this thing at the end of the show. It's called Senseless. It's this silly questions. I know you guys are big North Carolina fans out in Colorado, right? You got the Colorado State Rams out there. You got my guy Dion out there. You guys could be Colorado Buffalo fans.
Maybe.
All right. Brian's going to think that one over because the Air Force Academy is calling.
We are ACC rivals. So,
yeah. We're ACC rivals. So not the same one, but we're both ACC. So
are you really?
Florida State and UVA.
UVA, so yeah.
UVA. Okay.
Go Hoos. Yeah. So can't speak to the Carolina Cup there.
I struggle with that because Virginia is my nemesis when it comes to basketball. Them and Duke. Like I just can't.
You had to show me the cup, but
I did. Well, did you see like everything in the background? Yep. It's a lot.
Yeah. And a shirt.
And my shirt, my hat's light blue. There's a lot of light blue here. All right. Well, I couldn't find a Virginia Cup because, I didn't want to get one. So in light of that, and
should have brought mine down.
Yeah. And Florida State, I don't even know what to say. I just feel bad for you guys about the college football playoff still. But way to show up versus Georgia. That was a great show.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Sorry.
Great.
Had to get that in there. All right. Sadly, it is a North Carolina Cup because there is a lot of North Carolina stuff in here. So, all right, here we go. Just pretend it's a Virginia Cup. Use your imagination. All right. So I'm going to roll. Who wants to go first? Do you want to do ladies first? Beth, you want to go first?
She's up.
Sure.
All right. You're up first. All right. So here we go. I'll roll. All right. Number 4. There's proof.
Okay.
Even the 4 is light blue. Brian, did you know?
Yes, it is. That's even a Tar Heels.
Yeah, it is actually a Tar Heel die because I stole it from a Yahtzee game.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. All right, so Beth, here we go. Here's your question. What do you love the most about flying and what do you dislike the most about flying? So what do you love the most? What do you dislike the most?
I actually like the dedicated time when you're on the flight where you can get something done.
I had a feeling. I almost said that, but I didn't want to freak you out. But I was like, she probably just likes the fact that it's quiet.
What I dislike? Okay. I dislike having to check my bag. I want to bring it on with me.
Why can't there be enough room for everyone's bag? That's what I always wonder. Yeah. Anyway. All right. Well, here we go, Brian. Let's see if we can find a good number in the Carolina Cup for you. I don't know. There we go. Number 6.
6. All right.
Got a new camera for Christmas, so there we are. We're still working out the bugs. All right, number 6 is this. How would you make it more entertaining if you were doing the safety announcements?
Earlier, you talked about my love for rap. So,
Would you beatbox it, or would someone have to like lay a track for you to rap it?
No, I could bring my own beat.
With your hammer
sure
pants, or would your big old boombox on the shoulder? Like, what are we talking about? Your gold chain that you're rocking today? No?
Yeah. Too bad there's not a whole lot of room for some dancing, but
yeah, because you would bust a move.
Yeah. So rap would be kind of cool, I guess. I don't know.
All right. So you would rap it. I like it. Well, guys, I just want to say thanks so much for what you shared. I hope it was an exciting time for you. I really love the fact of your heart towards these younger people, because again, let's face it, I feel like right now more than ever, going back to your Abraham and Sarah analogy, they're looking for guidance. They're looking for some kind of shepherd to come along and say, no, this is the way we do it. No, this is how you can do it. There are millions of lots out there that are stuck and they need help. And I love the fact that you guys are willing to go to them and say, hey, come on, there's a better way. And I think that is just the love of Christ in the essence of really what he came to do. So I just want to acknowledge that too.
Well, ultimately, it's about pointing them to the greatest rescuer, which is Christ.
That's the greatest flight right there, when you get on board with God through Christ.
Yeah, because they really need to be transformed by the renewing of their minds every day, I would imagine.
You got to replace those lies of the enemy. Truth.
Well, guys and gals, kids and campers alike, I hope your tray table is in the upright position as we make our way back down to our landing spot today. Hopefully you buckled up and you didn't walk around the cabin too much, because, there was a lot of good stuff shared. I don't know about anybody else. When I get to talk to these military folks, these personnel, my heart immediately goes to them. My empathy level goes off the charts because I remember what it was like laying awake at night wondering if my dad was going to come home or not come home. I remember my mom sitting in the car at times wondering, was my dad there or not there? See, I grew up in an era back in Desert Storm, the first go round with the first Bush, running home from school because we were bombing downtown Baghdad. Yeah, that's how old I am. And I remember being so scared for my dad. So I'm just curious about this for you. When you think about the turbulence and the trials and the challenges of life, who do you turn to? Who do you look to for guidance? A friend of mine recently said, if I was going to fly in the Top Gun airplane, the F-14, I'd struggle because, there'd be no way I could do the controls because I don't know them. So who's controlling your life? Just a question for you to ponder as we get out of here. Remember this. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Thank you so much for flying with us today. And stay tuned till next week when we take flight. When we walk in other people's shoes.